Strengths are not just about personal traits, but also about patterns of behavior. Rather than looking at an individual's personal traits, diverse research programs on leadership behavior have sought to uncover the behaviors that effective leaders engage in. Behaviors tend to be learned more readily than traits, enabling leadership to be accessible to all. One study that served as a precursor to the behavior approach recognized autocratic and democratic leadership styles. Let's take a look. An autocratic leader is one who tends to centralize authority and derive power from position, control of rewards, and coercion. Whereas a democratic leader delegates authority to others, encourages participation, relies on subordinates' knowledge for the completion of tasks, and depends on subordinate respect for influence. One early series of studies on leadership behavior was conducted at The Ohio State University. The idea that leadership is reflected in behavior and not just personal traits provided a focus for subsequent research. Researchers conducted surveys to identify specific dimensions of leader behavior. Narrowing a list of nearly 2,000 leader behaviors into a questionnaire containing 150 examples of definitive leader behaviors, they developed the Leadership Behavior Description Questionnaire, or LBDQ, and administered it to employees. Hundreds of employees responded to various examples according to the degree to which their leaders engaged in the behaviors. The analysis of ratings resulted in two wide-ranging categories of leader behavior, later called consideration and initiating structure. Consideration describes the extent to which a leader cares about subordinates, respects their ideas and feelings, and establishes mutual trust. Showing appreciation, listening carefully to problems, and seeking input from subordinates regarding important decisions are examples of consideration behaviors. Initiating structure describes the extent to which a leader is task-oriented and directs subordinates' work activities towards goal achievement. This type of leader behavior includes directing tasks, getting people to work hard, planning, providing explicit schedules for work activities, and ruling with an iron hand. Studies at the University of Michigan took a different approach by directly comparing the behavior of effective and ineffective supervisors. The effectiveness of leaders was determined by the productivity of the subordinate group. Initial field studies and interviews at various job sites gave way to a questionnaire not unlike the LBDQ, called the Survey of Organizations. Over time, the Michigan researchers established two types of leadership behavior, each type consisting of two dimensions. First, employee-centered leaders display a focus on the human needs of their subordinates. Leader support and interaction are the two underlying dimensions of employee-centered behavior. Second, the job-centered leader directs activities towards scheduling, accomplishing tasks, and achieving efficiency. Goal emphasis and work facilitation are dimensions of this leadership behavior. Unlike the consideration and initiation structure styles defined by the Ohio State studies, Michigan researchers considered employee-centered leadership and job-centered leadership to be two distinct styles in opposition to one another. A leader is identifiable by a behavior characteristic of one or the other style, but not both. Blake and Mutton of the University of Texas proposed a two-dimensional leadership theory called the leadership grid that builds on the work of Ohio State and Michigan studies. Researchers rated leaders on a scale of 1 to 9 according to two criteria, the concern for people and the concern for production, as you see here. The scores for these criteria are plotted on a grid with an axis corresponding to each concern. The matrix depicts a two-dimensional model and 5 of 7 major leadership styles. Starting with country club management, a 1 for concern and results and a 9 for concern of people occurs when primary emphasis is given to people rather than work outputs. Team management, with 9s in both concern for people and concerns for results, is often considered the most effective style and is recommended because organization members work together to accomplish tasks. The middle-of-the-road management, 5s in both concern for people and result, reflects a moderate amount of concern for both people and production. Impoverished management, a 1 in both concern for people and results, means that the absence of leadership philosophy, leaders exert little effort towards interpersonal relationships or work accomplishment. And finally, authority compliance management, a 9 with a concern for results and a 1 with a concern for people, occurs when efficiency in operations is the dominant orientation. The leadership styles described by researchers at Ohio State, University of Michigan, and the University of Texas pertain to variables that roughly correspond to one another: consideration and initiating structure, employee-centered and job-centered, concern for people or concern for production. The research into behavioral approaches cumulated in two predominant types of leadership behaviors: people-oriented and task-oriented. People-oriented and task-oriented behaviors are important. They capture fundamental, underlying aspects of human behavior that must be considered for organizations to succeed. Although leaders may be high in either style, there is considerable belief that the best leaders are high in both behaviors. In general, it seems that people can indeed learn new leadership abilities. Although this high leadership is not the only effective style, researchers have looked into this kind of leader as a candidate for success in a wide variety of situations.